Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Gabby and welcome to my strange little YouTube channel. Now today's case is one that was very difficult to research into, and I knew before starting the research that it was going to be hard to mentally prepare to do this video. Today we are back with another identified Doe video, and if you're not familiar with this series on my channel, it's basically where we go over John and Jane Doe cases where the unidentified people have finally been identified. Pretty much every other comment for the past week since this man has been identified is people requesting for me to do this video. He was just identified last week and I had a subscriber reach out to me. They were the first person who let me know, and I kind of had a little bit of a freak out moment because this is one of the most known John Doe cases. If you search up John Doe on Google, this man's reconstruction photo is one of the main photos that comes up. And before I get into this video, I just wanted to say that if the subject of suicide is really hard for you to hear about and it's a very touchy subject for you, I would not watch this video because what I'm going to be getting into is hard to listen to. It's hard to stomach. It's very difficult to mentally imagine what this man went through. I will not be including any post-mortem photos in this video. I never do on my channel. You never have to worry about that, but especially not in this video because I've heard a few other people say this also, that this man's post-mortem photos are some of the hardest to look at. Also, if any of his family happens to come across this video, I only mean the utmost respect and my heart does go out to you, and I am just simply stating facts and the background story. So with that being said, let's just get into it. Lyle Stevik was the alias that a young unidentified man would be known as for 16 and a half years after his death. A man checked into a motel in Amanda Park in Washington called the Quinault Inn on September 14th, 2001 under the name Lyle Stevik. When he checked in, he used this name, and for his address, he put down the address for a Best Western in Meridian, Idaho, not his actual address. So obviously, from the start, he didn't want anyone to know his identity. After his death, they contacted this Best Western and asked if he had previously stayed there, and nobody had any idea who this man was or any knowledge if he was ever there. During his stay at the Quinault Inn, he was seen by somebody pacing back and forth right next to the highway that was next to the motel. He also complained that there was too much noise outside because his room was right next to the highway, so they ended up relocating him. The name Lyle Stevik has been theorized to have come from the novel You Must Remember This by Joyce Carol Oates. Even though it was spelled differently, this unidentified man spelled it without a C, and the character in the novel spelled it with a C. In the novel, the main character's father is named Lyle Stevik, and he attempts suicide, not succeeding though. This unidentified man, he unfortunately did. So he checked in on Friday, September 14th, 2001, and on Monday, September 17th, 2001, his body was found. Lyle had used a belt to hang himself from the small closet inside the motel room. He initially was only going to spend one night at this motel, so originally he only paid for one night, and then he decided to stay longer, so I'm guessing that the motel was not too strict with payments and they were going to allow him to pay before he left. At the scene, they found a note in the trash that simply said suicide in capital letters, and also a note left on the bedside table that read for the room and contained $160 in $20 bills. These $20 bills were strangely very fresh. They looked like they had been taken out of an ATM recently. They looked brand new and like they had only been folded in half. He had no wallet or credit card on him though, so it's strange that they looked so new. This man really had no belongings on him except for the clothes on his back and a few necessities found in the room. There was loose change found in the drawer and a toothbrush and toothpaste, but he had no luggage of any sort. Lyle was light-skinned, but the examination of his DNA concluded that he was at least 1/4 Native American and 1/4 Hispanic or Spanish. He had dark brown hair, almost black, and it was trimmed and neatly combed back, and he had greenish hazel eyes. He was about 6 feet tall, weighed about 130 to 140 pounds, and estimated to be between 20 to 30 years old. He had a scar from an appendix removal, a small mole on the left side of his chin. He had attached earlobes, his nails were clean and trimmed, and his teeth were in perfect condition. He was wearing a gray Fruit of the Loom t-shirt, Levi jeans, and black Timberland boots. He also had a plaid long sleeve button-up shirt that was found laying on the chair. It was theorized that he most likely lost a little bit of weight previously, about 30 to 40 pounds, because his clothes were a bit loose on him and his belt actually had extra holes punched into it. Since he may have lost weight, they thought that possibly he had some sort of an illness that caused him to want to commit suicide. But the autopsy showed that he was in perfect health, so he most likely committed suicide because of depression. There were a lot of people that found it very strange that he committed suicide only a few days after 9/11, and they tried to connect the two, that maybe he knew somebody who died in the tragedy and he couldn't go on without them and decided to commit suicide. The clerk at the motel who talked to him previously before he committed suicide said that he definitely had an accent. They couldn't really figure out what type of accent, but they were leaning more towards Canadian. He also was most likely not married because he didn't have a ring on his left ring finger, and he also didn't have a tan line there or any ring imprint to show that there had been a ring there previously. They did isotope testing on his body, and this man had been everywhere, so many different states before his death. This man arrived to the motel by bus. There were 2 that dropped people off in that location around the same time he arrived, and that was a bus coming from Port Angeles south and one coming from Aberdeen, which was north. They interviewed both bus drivers and neither could recall seeing this man. Now, because of the fact that he had only been deceased a short time before his body was found, they were able to easily get fingerprints, dental information, and DNA from him. They entered his DNA into the combined DNA index system, and there was no matches. They laid him to rest in an unmarked grave at Fern Hill Cemetery in Aberdeen, Washington. People working on this case and web sleuths online tried their hardest for 16.5 years to give this man his name back, and their efforts finally paid off this year. With the help of the Doe network, they were able to find possible matches to Lyle's DNA. They located these relatives, ran further tests. It was a match, and his family was able to positively identify him. On May 8th, 2018, the Grays Harbor Sheriff's Office announced that Lyle Stevik had been identified using DNA analysis performed by the DNA Doe network. Lyle Stevik, which is not his real name, was from Alameda County, California. He was 25 years old, and his family never reported him missing because they thought all these years that he had cut them off and was living elsewhere. Co-founder of the Doe network, Colleen Fitzpatrick, says, "You feel so grateful you have the skills to reunite the person with their family. You can say you bring closure to those people, but we've been told not to use that word because sometimes there is no closure. We bring answers to them. I think that's a better way of putting it. There's an answer, and that's not always going to make them happy. The flip side of knowing is that they no longer have hope." As of right now, we do not know Lyle Stevik's actual name. His family has requested that that information not be released to the public just yet. So it is their decision to ever even release that to the public. We also have not much of a background as to who Lyle was as a person or any photos of him while he was still alive. No matter the issues between him and his family before his passing, they are definitely going through a grieving process right now. I mean, they thought all these years that he was just off living somewhere else and didn't want to talk to them. And now they find out that he was a John Doe for 16.5 years, and there were thousands upon thousands of people trying to find out his identity. I mean, that's definitely a lot to take in. My heart definitely goes out to them. I, of course, don't know the entire situation, but they lost a family member in a very, very sad way. Even though I didn't include any of the photos that are very hard to look at, and I do warn you guys, if you are going to research in this case, be careful, they're not easy to look at. It is still hard to even look at the pictures of the room because you can just feel the sadness and the stillness, and it gives you goosebumps. Like I said before, we don't have any background as to who Lyle was as a person, but I think him leaving the money behind, that kind of gives us a little bit of an insight into his head and how he thought as a person. I mean, he was taking his life and he still wanted to do the right thing and make sure that the room was paid for. There are a ton of theories out there about this case, but out of respect for him and his family, I decided to not include those in this video because he has already been identified. There's really no reason to get into all those theories because we know who he is, or, you know, at least we know that he has been identified even though we don't know exactly who he is. It is amazing that with the internet and people who devote countless hours to these people and these cases, that we are able to give these people their names back, even though in this case, we don't really know his name yet. I recently did a video about the identity of Buckskin Doe being discovered, and when they started this year running the DNA testing on her, it took them 4 hours to finalize the match. When it comes to Lyle's, it took hundreds upon hundreds of hours with almost 20 skilled volunteers. It is confirmed that one of his grandparents was from Rio Arriba, New Mexico, which is also where his DNA cousins' families originated from. The subject of suicide, like most people, hits me in a weird way, so any video that I do that has to do with suicide, I always say that if you are feeling down or you are having suicidal thoughts, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. Never be afraid to call, please. And another thing is that my inbox is always open. You can always message me. I'm always here to talk. I'm always responding to people. Leave any other cases that you want me to cover down below in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're not already. I love you guys dearly, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.